Captain Elena Vasquez sat in her command chair aboard the UES Harmony. The ship moved slowly through space near the edge of human territory. This was just another routine patrol, the kind she had done hundreds of times before. The year was 2387. Humans had been part of the Galactic Coalition for over a century now. They were known as the Peaceful Ones, the Builders and Diplomats. Other alien races respected humans for their calm nature and smart technology. Wars were rare these days, thanks to the Coalition's rules. Elena checked the time. Her shift would end soon. She was looking forward to a hot meal and some rest. The communications officer, Lieutenant Torres, was running his usual scans of the area. Everything seemed normal. Then Torres sat up straight. "Captain, I'm getting something strange." Elena turned to him. "What kind of strange?" "It's a signal. Very weak. But it's using an old human frequency. Really old. Radabent. Everyone to expensive side." Elena felt her heart skip a beat. Old human frequencies meant only one thing: ships, from the early days when humans first left Earth. Those ships had been lost for centuries. "Can you clean it up?" she asked. Torres worked at his console for several minutes. The bridge was quiet, except for the soft hum of the ship's engines. Finally, Torres looked up with a pale face. "Captain, you need to hear this." The signal crackled through the speakers. The voice was human, but filled with fear and pain. "This is Colony Ship New Dawn. Day 2847 of our captivity. We are still alive, but barely. They take our children when they turn 12. We don't know what happens to them. The work camps are killing us slowly. Our population is down to 40,000 from the original 50,000. If anyone receives this message, please remember us." The signal cut off with sounds of energy, weapons, and screaming. Elena stood up, her hands shaking. "When was this transmitted?" "According to the timestamp, 3 days ago," Torres said quietly. Dr. James Chen, the ship's expert on alien languages, was called to the bridge. He studied the signal data with growing concern. The New Dawn was one of the first colony ships to leave Earth over 200 years ago. It had vanished without a trace. "Captain," Chen said, "there's more in the signal. Hidden data. Coordinates." Elena looked at the star map Chen brought up. The coordinates pointed to a system far beyond Coalition space. It was in territory controlled by the Hegemony, an alien empire that had never joined the Coalition. They were known to be unfriendly, but no one knew much about them. "Captain, there's something else," Chen added. His voice was very quiet. "The signal mentions biological research. They're experimenting on human children." Elena felt sick. She had seen war before, but this was different. Trapped and tortured for centuries, while the rest of humanity thought they were dead. She sent an emergency message to Admiral Sarah Mitchell at Fleet Command. The response came back within hours. Admiral Mitchell wanted to see the signal data immediately. Elena took a shuttle to the main fleet base. Admiral Mitchell was a tough woman who had served in the military for 40 years. She had seen everything the galaxy could throw at humanity. But when she heard the New Dawn signal, Elena saw something she had never seen before. Pure rage in the Admiral's eyes. "How long have they been prisoners?" Mitchell asked. "According to the signal, over 200 years. 8 generations of humans born into slavery." Mitchell was quiet for a long time. She stared at the star map showing the Hegemony territory. Finally, she spoke. "The Hegemony has always claimed they don't interfere with other species. They said any ships that entered their space had joined them willingly." "What do we do?" Elena asked. Mitchell stood up and walked to the window. Outside, human ships moved through space. Cargo vessels, science ships, passenger liners, all living in peace because they thought their people were safe. "The Coalition will want to negotiate," Mitchell said. "They'll want to send diplomats and talk for years. while those people suffer. Elena nodded. The coalition always chose talking over fighting. It was their way. But this is different, Mitchell continued. These are our people, our families, our children. Mitchell turned back to Elena. Her face was hard as stone. There's an old human saying, Captain. It's from the time before we joined the coalition, when we still fought our own wars. We promised that no human would ever be left behind, no matter the cost. Elena felt a chill run down her spine. She had read about the old days in history books. Humans had been fierce warriors before they learned to be peaceful. Admiral, what are your orders? Mitchell walked to her desk and opened a communication channel to all human fleet commanders. Elena watched as admirals and captains appeared on screens from across human space. Ladies and gentlemen, Mitchell began. She told them about the new dawn signal. Elena watched the faces on the screens change from curiosity to shock to anger. These were people who had forgotten how to be warriors, but they were about to remember. The hegemony has threatened war if any coalition ships enter their territory, Mitchell said. They think this will keep us away. She paused and looked directly at each commander. They're wrong. Prep the fleets. All of them. Elena felt something change in that moment. The peaceful humans the galaxy knew were about to become something else entirely. Something the galaxy had never seen before. As she left Admiral Mitchell's office, Elena heard the Admiral making one more call. Sir, Mitchell said, I need you to activate the old war protocols. Yes, sir. All of them. News of the new dawn spread across human space faster than light itself. Within 6 hours, every human world knew about their lost brothers and sisters. Within 12 hours, something unprecedented began to happen. Captain Marcus Torres had served in the human military for 15 years. He had never seen anything like the mobilization that started that day. Every human world, from the core systems near Earth to the tiny frontier colonies, began preparing for war. The Altarian Council, one of humanity's closest allies in the coalition, sent urgent messages. Their ambassador, a tall, blue-skinned being named HFY, met with Admiral Mitchell personally. Admiral, surely you cannot be serious about attacking the hegemony, HFY said. They have never been defeated. Their military is enormous. Mitchell looked at the alien ambassador calmly. Ambassador, how many children do you have? HFY seemed confused by the question. 3. But I do not see. If someone took your children and tortured them for 8 generations, what would you do? The ambassador was quiet for a moment. I would want them back, but... Then you understand perfectly, Mitchell said. The coalition leadership called emergency meetings. The Crystalline Collective offered to send mediators to the hegemony. The peaceful Verdani promised to help with negotiations. But humanity wasn't listening anymore. Captain Torres received special orders from Fleet Command. He was to take his stealth ship, the Shadow Knife, and get close to the coordinates from the New Dawn signal. His mission was simple: find out what was really happening and record everything. The journey to hegemony space took 2 weeks. Torres and his small crew traveled in complete silence, using every stealth technology humanity had developed. As they approached the target system, what they found made Torres's blood freeze. The system had once been beautiful. 3 planets orbited a yellow star, much like Earth's sun. But now, the planets were covered with mining operations and factory complexes. Huge ships moved between the worlds, carrying cargo. Captain, said his science officer, Lieutenant Kim, I'm detecting human life signs on the 2nd planet. Thousands of them. Torres ordered the ship closer. Through powerful telescopes, they could see the surface. What they saw would haunt them forever. Human beings worked in massive open-pit mines under the burning sun. They wore ragged clothes and moved slowly, like people who had given up hope long ago. Alien guards with energy weapons watched them constantly. But the worst part was the children. Boys and girls who looked about 12 years old were being loaded onto transport ships. They went willingly, but their eyes were empty. Something had been done to their minds. "My God," whispered Kim. "What are they doing to them?" Torres recorded everything. They watched for 3 days, documenting the horror. The humans on the planet below lived in metal barracks with no windows. They worked 16 hours a day mining rare crystals. When someone collapsed from exhaustion, the alien guards would drag them away. They never came back. On the 3rd day, they saw something that made Torres order an immediate retreat. A ship arrived carrying what looked like human soldiers. But these soldiers moved wrong. Like robots. Their eyes were dead, and strange metal devices were attached to their heads. "Those used to be the children," Kim said quietly. The alien guards called them enhanced units. They were stronger and faster than normal humans, but they had no free will left. The hegemony had turned human children into living weapons. Torres got his ship out of the system as quickly as possible. The journey back to human space seemed to take forever. When they finally arrived, Torres went straight to Admiral Mitchell's office. Mitchell watched the recordings in complete silence. When they finished, she sat still for several minutes. Torres could see her hands shaking with rage. "How many enhanced units did you count?" she finally asked. "At least 2,000 on that ship alone," Torres replied. Mitchell stood up and walked to her wall screen. She brought up a map of human space. Red dots marked every fleet base, every shipyard, every military installation. "Captain Torres, I'm about to show you something that has been classified for over a century." The map changed. Suddenly, there were 10 times as many red dots. Hidden bases, secret shipyards, weapon factories that most humans didn't even know existed. "The Coalition thinks we gave up war when we joined them," Mitchell said. "They think we destroyed our weapons and became peaceful. They're wrong. We just hid our weapons and hoped we'd never need them again." Torres stared at the map in amazement. "Admiral, this is incredible. How many ships do we really have?" "Enough," Mitchell said simply. "More than enough." Over the next week, those hidden bases came alive. Ships that had been in storage for decades were brought out and updated with new technology. Weapons that the Coalition had never seen were loaded and prepared. The other Coalition species watched in growing alarm as humanity's true military might became visible. The gentle humans they thought they knew were revealing themselves to be something much more dangerous. Ambassador Zex High requested another meeting with Admiral Mitchell. This time, he brought representatives from 12 other Coalition species. "Admiral," Zex High said, "our sensors show massive military buildup in human space. Some of our military experts believe you could challenge the entire Coalition fleet." Mitchell nodded. "They're right." The alien ambassadors looked shocked. "But why did you hide this from us?" "Because we hoped we'd never need it," Mitchell replied. "We wanted to be the peaceful species you thought we were. We tried very hard to forget how to be warriors." She gestured to the recordings from Torres's mission. "But some things cannot be forgiven. Some lines cannot be crossed." That night, the first human battle fleets began moving toward hegemony space. They traveled in formation, massive dreadnoughts surrounded by clouds of smaller ships. The galaxy watched and wondered what humanity had become. On Earth, an old man named General Harrison was brought out of retirement. He had fought in the last human war over 150 years ago. As he put on his uniform again, he spoke words that would become famous across the galaxy. "The galaxy is about to learn why humans conquered every predator on our homeworld," he said. "We didn't become peaceful because we were weak. We became peaceful because we were too dangerous." Overlord Vex Tar ruled the hegemony from his throne world at the center of their empire. He was a massive creature with 6 arms and skin like black metal. For 300 years, he had built his power by conquering weaker species and using them as slaves. When his intelligence officers told him about human fleet movements, Vextar laughed. The sound was like grinding metal. "These soft mammals think they can threaten us," he said to his war council. "Show them what happens to species that challenge the hegemony." Vextar ordered a live broadcast to be sent across the galaxy. Every species with communication technology would receive it. He wanted everyone to see what happened when someone opposed him. The broadcast showed a large chamber on the second planet of the New Dawn system. 1,000 human prisoners stood in rows, including many children. Hegemony guards surrounded them with energy weapons. Vextar's voice echoed through the chamber. "Humans of the galaxy, your fleets approach our territory. This is unwise. To show you the price of such foolishness, these prisoners will die. If any human ship crosses our border, 10,000 more will follow them." The weapons fired. The humans died quickly, but their screams echoed across space for everyone to hear. Admiral Mitchell received the broadcast on the bridge of her flagship, the UES Vengeance. Every human in the fleet saw it. Every human in the galaxy saw their people murdered for the crime of trying to rescue them. Something fundamental changed in humanity that day. The careful restraint they had learned during their years in the Coalition vanished like smoke. What remained was something the galaxy had never seen before: the fury of a species that had once been apex predators. Mitchell's response was broadcast on all frequencies 24 hours later. She stood on her bridge, surrounded by her officers. Her voice was calm, but her eyes burned with cold fire. "Overlord Vextar, you have made a mistake. You think this is about negotiation. You think this is about territory or politics. You are wrong. This is about justice. This is about a promise we made long ago, that no human would be left behind." She paused and looked directly into the camera. "You should have killed them quickly when we first appeared. Now it's too late." The human fleet crossed the hegemony border exactly 24 hours after the broadcast. They were met by the largest hegemony war fleet ever assembled. Over 3,000 ships, arranged in perfect battle formation. The Battle of Kepler's Gate began at dawn. The hegemony ships were large and heavily armed. They had never lost a major battle. Their tactics were based on 3 centuries of conquest. But they had never fought humans before. Admiral Mitchell's fleet moved like a pack of predators. Human ships were smaller and faster than the hegemony vessels, but they fought with a coordination that seemed impossible. Ships that had never worked together before moved as one mind. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the hegemony fleet was gone. Not defeated, completely destroyed. No survivors, no escape pods. Nothing remained but debris and the echo of human vengeance. But the humans didn't celebrate their victory. They didn't even stop to collect prisoners. The fleet moved directly toward the New Dawn system while repair ships dealt with the few damaged human vessels. On the second planet, the enslaved humans looked up at the sky as familiar ships approached. Many of them wept. Their grandparents had told stories about the ships of Earth, about the promise that humanity would never abandon its own. Sarah Chen was 93 years old. She had been born in the slave camps, as had her parents and grandparents. She had never seen a free human ship before, but she recognized the blue and silver colors of Earth from the stories passed down through generations. "They came," she whispered to her granddaughter. "They actually came." The human fleet didn't just liberate the planet. They began systematically destroying every hegemony facility in the system. Mining operations that had run for 2 centuries were turned to ash in minutes. The alien guards who had tortured humans for generations tried to surrender. Admiral Mitchell's response was broadcast to the galaxy. "We don't accept surrenders from those who torture children." The hegemony installations burned. Overlord Vextar sent urgent communications to Admiral Mitchell. He offered wealth beyond imagination, territory spanning entire star systems, even his own surrender. Each message was more desperate than the last. Mitchell's responses grew shorter with each communication. "No. Find peace in oblivion. You should have thought of that sooner. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as humanity revealed its true nature. These weren't the peaceful builders and diplomats everyone thought they knew. These were the descendants of creatures who had climbed to the top of their world's food chain through intelligence, cooperation, and absolute ruthlessness when threatened. Other species that had traded with the hegemony began receiving messages from human admirals. The communications were simple and direct. You have 72 hours to release any human prisoners and end all trade with the hegemony. Failure to comply will result in your systems being treated as hostile targets. The Zephyrian Trade Consortium, which had bought enhanced units from the hegemony for 50 years, released their human slaves within 6 hours. The Mordak Empire, known for their pride and stubbornness, took 12 hours to comply. The Silicon Coalition, artificial beings who thought they were superior to organic life, needed only 3 hours to decide that discretion was the better part of valor. Meanwhile, the human fleet moved deeper into hegemony space. But they weren't just destroying things. Medical ships followed the war fleet, filled with doctors and counselors to help traumatized survivors. Engineering vessels rebuilt infrastructure on liberated worlds. Teacher ships brought education to species who had been denied it for centuries. The galaxy began to understand humanity's true duality. They were utterly ruthless to enemies, and infinitely compassionate to victims. They could burn a planet to ash and then spend years helping survivors rebuild their lives. But the most terrifying thing about humanity wasn't their weapons or their ships. It was their patience. They had spent 2 centuries becoming the peaceful species the galaxy wanted them to be. But when pushed beyond all reasonable limits, they had simply returned to what they had always been, the most dangerous predators in the galaxy. And now, every alien empire that had grown comfortable with human gentleness was learning a hard lesson. Mercy is not weakness. It's a choice. And when that choice is taken away, what remains is justice delivered with surgical precision and absolute determination. What followed was not a war in any traditional sense. Wars had battles, victories, defeats, and negotiations. What humanity brought to the hegemony was something entirely different. A systematic extermination campaign executed with clinical precision. Admiral Mitchell's fleet moved through hegemony space like a scythe cutting wheat. They didn't occupy territory or claim worlds for humanity. They simply erased every trace of the hegemony's cruelty from existence. Captain Elena Vasquez, who had first received the SOS signal, now commanded a liberation squadron. Her ships specialized in freeing slave camps and research facilities. What she found on world after world made her understand why Admiral Mitchell had chosen complete destruction over negotiation. On the world of Kethmar, Elena's team discovered laboratories where hegemony scientists had been conducting experiments on captured children for over a century. The facilities contained detailed records of their work. Humans weren't the only victims. Dozens of species had suffered under hegemony cruelty. "Captain," said Dr. Williams, her chief medical officer, "some of these experiments, they were just torturing beings to see how much pain they could endure before dying." Elena read the reports with growing horror. The hegemony hadn't just enslaved other species for labor. They had treated sentient beings as laboratory animals, testing weapons, diseases, and psychological torture methods. But humanity's response revealed something the galaxy had never seen before. Human ships appeared at every slave camp, every research facility, every prison world. But they didn't come alone. Each human fleet was followed by massive medical ships, supply vessels, and transport craft. The humans evacuated every non-hegemony being they found. Freed slaves from dozens of species were given ships, supplies, medical care, and coordinates to safe worlds. Species that had been scattered and broken by centuries of slavery watched in amazement as humans spent enormous resources to help them rebuild their lives. The Verdani ambassador, a plant-like being named Synthesis, tried to understand what she was witnessing. Her people had always been pacifists, believing that violence only created more violence. "Why do the humans help their enemies' other victims?" she asked her aide. "Perhaps they see themselves in those beings," the aide replied. "Perhaps this is what makes them different." The liberation of the Keftar system showed the galaxy something unprecedented. The system contained the largest slave processing center in the hegemony. Over 2 million beings from 30 different species lived in horrific conditions, sorted by their usefulness for different types of forced labor. Admiral Chen's task force arrived at Keftar and found hegemony defenders waiting. The aliens expected a battle. Instead, they received a communication from Admiral Chen that would become famous across the galaxy. "Hegemony forces, you have 10 minutes to evacuate this system. Any ship remaining after that time will be destroyed. Any attempt to harm prisoners will result in the immediate sterilization of your homeworlds." The hegemony commander, War Chief Vexatal, responded with typical arrogance. "Human fool. You are outnumbered 3-1. We will crush you and use your bodies to feed our slaves." Admiral Chen's response was simple. "Your 10 minutes started 30 seconds ago." The human attack was unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. Human ships moved with perfect coordination, as if controlled by a single mind. But more importantly, they fought with weapons the hegemony had never seen before. Plasma lances that could cut through any known armor. Quantum torpedoes that ignored shields entirely. Nanite swarms that could disable entire fleets without killing their crews. Humanity revealed military technology that was centuries ahead of anything in the galaxy. The battle lasted 8 minutes. When it ended, every hegemony ship was disabled but intact. The aliens inside were alive, but trapped in their powerless vessels. Then the real work began. Human medical teams swarmed through the prison complex, treating injured beings and providing food and medicine. Engineering teams began dismantling the slave facilities, while construction ships built temporary housing for the survivors. The freed beings watched in amazement as thousands of humans worked around the clock to help them. No one asked for payment. No one demanded loyalty or service. The humans simply helped because it was the right thing to do. Among the freed slaves was an ancient being called the Keeper. His species had been enslaved by the hegemony for over 500 years. The Keeper had been alive when the first hegemony ships arrived at his homeworld. "Why do you help us?" the Keeper asked Admiral Chen. "We can offer you nothing in return." Chen knelt beside the old being, who was dying from centuries of mistreatment. "Because it's what we do. Because no one deserves to suffer the way you have suffered." The Keeper studied the human admiral with ancient eyes. "Your species is very young, but very wise. You understand something that most species forget, that mercy and strength are not opposites. They are the same thing." News of humanity's actions spread across the galaxy faster than their fleets could travel. Every species that had ever traded with the hegemony or ignored their cruelty watched in growing terror as the true scope of the alien empire's evil was revealed. The collective of wise minds, an ancient alliance of the galaxy's oldest species, sent an urgent message to the human government on Earth. Their words were simple, but carried enormous weight. "We have watched the galaxy for 1,000,000 years. We have seen empires rise and fall, species evolve and go extinct. But we have never seen anything like what the hegemony has done, and we have never seen anything like humanity's response." The message continued. "You have shown us that we were wrong. We thought peace came from avoiding conflict. You have taught us that true peace comes from making the cost of cruelty too high to bear." But perhaps the most important reaction came from the freed slaves themselves. Beings from dozens of species began volunteering to help with liberation efforts. The humans had shown them that resistance was possible, that justice could exist in the galaxy. Overlord Vextar, watching his empire crumble from his throne world, made increasingly desperate attempts to negotiate. He offered to free all remaining slaves. He promised to dismantle his military. He even offered to surrender himself for trial. Admiral Mitchell's responses became a lesson in human determination. Each reply was shorter than the last. Too late. Should have thought of that sooner. No. The galaxy began to understand that this wasn't about conquest or territory. This was about a promise kept, a debt paid, and justice served with absolute precision. Humanity had revealed itself to be something the galaxy had never encountered before, a species that could be infinitely patient and utterly ruthless in equal measure. The siege of Hegemonic Prime became the stuff of legend. The planet had never been successfully attacked in 3 centuries of hegemony expansion. Its orbital defenses were considered the strongest in the galaxy. When Admiral Mitchell's fleet arrived, they brought with them something that defied comprehension. The human fleet was enormous. Over 10,000 ships of every size and type surrounded the hegemony homeworld. But what caught the attention of every observer in the galaxy wasn't the number of ships. It was what they were building. The construction project took 3 weeks to complete. Human engineering ships worked around the clock, assembling something massive in the space between Hegemonic Prime and its star. The galaxy watched in growing horror as they realized what humanity was creating. It was a mirror array. Thousands of precisely positioned reflective panels that could focus the system's star into a precision weapon. The humans had built a device capable of turning stellar energy into a planet-killing beam. Dr. Sarah Kim, a physicist from the Altarian Science Council, watched the construction through long-range sensors. Her calculations made her tremble. They could burn the entire planet to ash in seconds, she told her colleagues. Or they could use it with surgical precision to target individual buildings. The level of control they've achieved is impossible. But Admiral Mitchell didn't use the weapon. Instead, she began a different kind of warfare, psychological. Every day, the mirror array grew larger and more powerful. Every day, Overlord Vextar watched from his palace and knew that humanity held his life in their hands. The broadcasts were simple but devastating. Recordings from freed slaves telling their stories. Medical reports from human doctors treating victims of hegemony experiments. Lists of the dead, read aloud by human officers in voices that never showed emotion but somehow conveyed infinite grief. The broadcasts weren't just sent to Hegemonic Prime. They were transmitted across the galaxy, to every species that had ever traded with the hegemony or ignored their crimes. The galaxy began to understand the true scope of what had been happening in hegemony space. Ambassador Zex High of the Altarian Council received a private communication from Admiral Mitchell during the siege. "Admiral," Zex High said, "surely you don't intend to destroy an entire planet. Think of the innocent beings who might live there." Mitchell's response chilled the ambassador to his core. "Ambassador, our scans show that there are no innocent beings on that planet. Every resident is either a hegemony official, a guard, or someone who directly profited from slavery. The innocents are all in chains on other worlds." As the mirror array neared completion, something unexpected began to happen. The hegemony's own subject species started rebelling. Inspired by humanity's example and quietly supplied with weapons by human special forces, they rose up across the empire. The revolution wasn't led by humans. It was led by every species the hegemony had ever oppressed. Beings who had been slaves for centuries suddenly remembered what freedom meant. The hegemony military found itself fighting on 1,000 fronts as their empire collapsed from within. On the mining world of Tertex Val, the slave revolt was led by a being called the Forge Master. His people had been forced to work in metal foundries for 200 years. When human ships appeared in the system, the Forge Master led his people in capturing their guards' weapons. "Today, we are no longer slaves," he announced to his followers. "Today, we remember that we are the children of warriors." Similar scenes played out across hegemony space. The empire that had seemed unbeatable was revealed to be a shell built on the suffering of others. When those others stopped suffering in silence, the shell cracked and crumbled. Overlord Vextar watched his empire die from his throne room. His communications with Admiral Mitchell became increasingly desperate as each day passed. "What do you want?" he transmitted. "Territory? Resources? Name your price." Mitchell's response came back quickly. "We want you to understand something, Overlord. This isn't about price. This isn't about negotiation. This is about consequences." The next day, Vextar tried again. "I will free all the remaining slaves. I will dismantle the research facilities. I will surrender myself for trial." Mitchell's reply was shorter. Too late. On the final day of the siege, with the mirror array ready to fire and rebel forces closing in on his palace, Vextar sent one last message. "What do you want? What will make you stop?" Admiral Mitchell's response became one of the most quoted statements in galactic history. She spoke slowly, clearly, so that every word would be preserved forever. "We want you to remember this moment, Overlord. When your species tells stories to their young, they will speak of the day they learned that some lines should never be crossed. They will remember that mercy is not weakness. It's a choice. And they will know that when you take that choice away from humanity, what remains is not cruelty. It's justice." The mirror array fired once, but not at the planet. The focused stellar energy struck the empty moon beside Hegemonic Prime, turning it into molten slag in 3 seconds. The demonstration of power was so overwhelming that it could be seen from the planet's surface. The message was clear. Humanity could have destroyed them all, but chose not to. The mercy they showed wasn't weakness. It was strength under perfect control. 30 minutes after the demonstration, Overlord Vextar and his entire high command surrendered unconditionally. The war was over, but its effects would last forever. The former hegemony territory was redistributed among the freed species, with humanity taking nothing for themselves except one simple promise: that slavery would never again be tolerated in this sector of space. The galactic community's view of humanity changed completely. They were no longer seen as merely peaceful diplomats. They were understood to be a species that chose peace from a position of overwhelming strength. The human doctrine became part of galactic law. Any species engaging in systematic slavery or genocide would face not just human justice, but the justice of every species humanity had befriended. And humanity had made many friends among the galaxy's former victims. The rescued colonists of New Eden established a memorial world where the stories of their 8 generations of suffering and their day of liberation were preserved. The site became a pilgrimage destination for freed beings across the galaxy. Captain Elena Vasquez, who had first heard the SOS signal, received a message from Maria Santos, the last living person who remembered the original voyage of the New Dawn. Maria was 127 years old and had been 5 when the hegemony captured their ship. "Thank you for hearing us," Maria's message said. "Thank you for remembering the promise." The story ended with humanity returning to their role as peacekeepers and diplomats. But now, every species in the galaxy understood that humanity's gentle nature was a gift, not a limitation. And across the vastness of space, a new message was transmitted on all frequencies. This is Earth. If you can hear this, know that you are not forgotten. Humanity remembers its promises. Humanity is coming. The galaxy had learned that sometimes the most terrifying thing isn't a species that knows only war. It's a species that knows both war and peace, and chooses which one you deserve.